And with that, I'll say good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Krause. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Strategic Communications for the VCCS System Office, and I have the great honor and privilege of moderating today's session. And I can tell you, I've worked at the VCCS for about 10 years now, and we've had Republican and Democratic governors, and they've all been incredibly good to our community college system. And one of the ways they've done that is actually appointing extraordinary board members, folks from the business community, educators, and others to come and help govern us. And in case you don't know, board members are appointed to 4-year terms, and it can be renewed once, so one person may serve up to 8 years at a time. And with that, I want to start with Mr. Jim Cuthbertson, our board chair, and ask our 3 board members today to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Cuthbertson. As Jeff said, I'm the board chair. I'm a retired corporate executive in the healthcare field. I was president of the Texas Heart Institute, the world's largest cardiovascular care center in Houston. Prior to that, I was with a multi-specialty group practice, the Cleveland Clinic, the second largest group practice in the country, who now has a branch office in Abu Dhabi. So they're a world-class, worldwide organization. But that's basically my experience. It's in the healthcare arena. We had academic faculty. We have a medical school, the Cleveland Clinic. So I have a little sense as to the academic dimensions of community college system.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Gooden. I'm one of the newest board members, just rounding out my first year on the board, so I'm delighted to be here. In terms of background, I currently serve as a professor of public administration and policy at the Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University, and just completed my presidential term with the American Society for Public Administration. It's the largest and most prominent professional association, so I think about the NEA only for public administration. But most importantly, I'm a proud graduate of Patrick Henry Community College. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Idalia Fernandez. I'm, in terms of board terms, I'm the eldest on the board, serving my final year after 2 terms. My background is as a director of a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. called Community Wealth Partners. It's an organization that is focusing on developing capacity with nonprofit organizations. And I'm a director that leads our strategic capacity building and technical assistance work, and I lead a portfolio of coaching. I am an executive coach, so I work one-on-one with teams and with executive directors across the country. Prior to that, I was the president of a nonprofit called Hispanic College Fund that worked with 4,000 plus Latino and students and other students of color in workforce development programs and support with scholarship and mentorship. And so that was my connection to the VCCS and the community colleges, is in writing all those scholarship checks for many of our students. So that's me.
So the one thing that really sets this session apart within this leadership series is it's been a lot of presidents talking about leadership and their philosophies and their experiences. All of you have mostly experience outside of higher education. So, Mr. Cuthbertson, we'll start with you. What inspired you to go for the career you had? Was there a certain moment that really set that off?
There was a lot of serendipity involved. I think, as many people will attest, when we graduate from college, we haven't the slightest idea what we want to do. I had a sense of high finance. I had a paper out when I was 14, and I leveraged that into 6 different paper routes. I became the Randolph Hearst of the Des Moines Register Tribune, but I was always fascinated with organization and putting things together, and so I decided to go after a business degree. I have a degree in economics and accounting. I graduated in the 60s, and now that was another century, as you know. And during that time, any organization would hire you. Didn't matter who you were, what college you graduated from, what your specialty was, what your studies were, field of studies, because they had their own training programs. GE was one of the biggest, IBM, all of them would pick up thousands of college graduates and put them through their indoctrination program, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. and they'd have a whole fleet of trained IBM, GE individuals, leaders, salesmen, whatever. I went into public accounting. I joined Touche and Company, one of the big 8 firms. Unfortunately, the Vietnam War was going on at the time, and the government asked that I provide some service, which I did for 5 years. So I spent 5 years in active duty as an infantry company commander, and learned a lot of skills. I had command authority. I had responsibility as a young man, 25, 26, for $1 million worth of equipment. I was in a mechanized unit. I had tanks, armored personnel carriers, airplanes. So I learned early on how to lead organizations and what made organizations good and what made them bad. Went back into public accounting. Through my clients, who were largely medical care entities, I found myself being attracted to the Cleveland Clinic, and that's how I got into healthcare. And from there, it's history. I went from there to Texas Heart Institute. I have a couple of other corporations. I started my own with outpatient diagnostic and patient-centered delivery centers, which I ultimately sold to Health South. So it was really serendipitous that I found myself in healthcare.
What about you, Dr. Gooden? Any moments of being a media mogul?
Well, not quite, but my career is primarily almost all in higher education, so very different than my colleagues here. But I think what really attracted me to higher ed, so after going to Patrick Henry and completing the degree there, I transferred to Virginia Tech and then received my doctorate degree from Syracuse University at the Maxwell School. And at that point, by the time I had completed the doctoral program, I thought, I really like what higher education is about from a faculty perspective. Teaching, research, and service, I enjoy that. I think if you look throughout my career, I think I would characterize myself as someone who enjoys change within the stability of the same employer. So I don't change employers a lot, but I change what I do a lot. And so I think after 4 or 5 years, I tend to then want to do something else. So I was director of the MPA, Masters of Public Administration program for the Virginia Tech Richmond Center when I was on the faculty of Virginia Tech. I served as director of the Gracie Harris Leadership Institute at VCU, director of graduate studies, did a Fulbright scholarship. So I just find that even though I enjoy being in academia and I enjoy working in the areas of research, and very much enjoy being in the classroom, enjoy mentoring new faculty and teaching and doing administration, I find for myself, after I've done, especially an administrative appointment, after about 4 or 5 years, I tend to then say, I think I want to do something else. And that brings a lot of fulfillment and I think keeps me also very excited about what I'm doing and the work I'm doing.
Now, Ms. Fernandez, you said a moment ago you've had different changes in your career. What's been driving you along the way?
I would say that the thread that runs through my career has been my love for learning and building on my skills. So my education is undergraduate in biology with a French minor, so that should give you a clue of how congruent these things are in my head. So after college, I said, where do I go from here? I did actually start my career in a research lab and found that was not the right fit. So just as also paying for college throughout, I felt more at home in the business environment. So I kind of took a pivot from that research lab to going back to the university and working in lots of office spaces doing budget analysis and just sort of building on organizational skills. To the point that I started moonlighting, if that's a word that's still used, and did some consulting, working with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Boston Consulting Group, doing kind of like PowerPoint presentations and taking analytical data and making it visual. And this was just something I learned on the side. So I decided that was going to be maybe the entryway to where was this journey taking me. So at that time, that was in Boston, at that time moved to this area and said, what I want to do is and take these skills and discover what I can do with them. So I got hired by a big corporate entity in Falls Church, Virginia, and was a wonderful start of my career, just sort of the resources that were available, warships and tanks, very similar. We share that background. That's what the focus of this company was. And saw myself growing, given more and more responsibility, learning a lot more skills. But at the end of the day, there was a satisfaction gap for me. And the question is, was there a pivotal moment? And I think it was that I was getting recognized for my leadership, recognized for my contributions in the company, but at the end of the day, I was not feeling satisfied. So I started to look for opportunities where, how can I bring all these skills and do something with them that feels meaningful to me? And that's when I started looking for volunteer opportunities and found the nonprofit sector that I didn't know existed. I didn't know what that was. I only knew, you could be a lawyer or a doctor, or you could have a corporate job. And so it was just a whole new world where I found home, where I could take all of my analytical skills, my scientific background, all of my work experience that put me through college, to turn that into helping students thrive and to helping students like me and families like mine have the tools, have the knowledge, and have the connections to set up a student to be successful. So for me, the journey has been discovering what I'm passionate about and putting all my skills towards that. So it's been a rewarding journey, and now I continue to do that in working with nonprofit leaders. It's about making a difference for people. So aligning with your purpose has been a theme.
Now, Dr. Gooden, I'll give you the next question.
Okay.
From Ms. Fernandez, we just heard a lot about many different skills. What would you say is the one skill that you use, or the one strength that you use most as a leader?
Well, I hope it's excellent vision. I think that's a really important skill. I don't just say vision, because I think there are a lot of leaders with vision, but that vision may not be appropriate for the organization. It may not be advancing the organization. But I think really being able to think through, say, over the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, opportunities for the organization, being able to sort of develop a path to strategically align with achieving those, I think that's something that has worked really well for me throughout my career. And I think that part of that is being very knowledgeable of the system and having a depth of knowledge. I mean, now this is my 20th year in academia, and most of that having been at Virginia Commonwealth University. And so you build a lot of relationships. I mean, you know a lot of people, you respect them, they respect you, you can get a lot done. But I think having the ability to sort of think through next steps, and so set the post and then try to find a plan to get us there. And I think sometimes, and I really appreciate that a lot of folks have sort of signed on blindly with some confidence to say, okay, I don't quite see it, I don't see how we're going to get there and do that. But we've been very fortunate to realize many of those goals. One of my favorite sayings is on the bottom of every email that you receive from me is from Nelson Mandela, which says, it always seems impossible until it's done. And so I think always trying to think through what are some things that it might seem like, it's a stretch goal, it's even beyond a stretch goal. But I think if we really put our minds to it and have the talented folks that we're able to work with, we can achieve that and more. And for me, with the help of a lot of other folks, that's tend to work out pretty well.
Ms. Fernandez, one goal, or excuse me, one skill, one strength, what do you rely on as a leader?
It's very similar to Dr. Gooden's. I think for me, it's not taking no as the final stop. It's always looking like, how can this be done? Okay, if this is not the entryway, then where's the next entryway? I would say is coupled with excellent vision is having the perseverance to make things happen. That's how I would describe that.
Mr. Cuthbertson, one strength, one skill, what do you rely on?
I'll build upon what Susan and Idalia said. Having the vision and being able to articulate that vision successfully and having people follow you and understand what that vision means. Probably the most significant trait that a successful leader has is integrity, truthfulness. You can't lead if there's no integrity. Leadership is a two-way street, actually. It's a shared responsibility. Those who are led allow you to lead simply because they trust you. They believe that you have the integrity, you have the vision, you have the leadership skills. I was once described by one of my bosses as being restless because, and I thought it was an excellent term, and it really does describe who I am and what I'm all about, and it's borne out on who I became and how I moved through my career. I was always looking for that next opportunity to spread the vision that I had, that we could be better than this. What makes the Cleveland Clinic so great? I opened a clinic in Istanbul, Turkey. I took the Cleveland Clinic from 98th and Euclid Avenue, which was a huge enterprise there, 1,000-bed hospital and all of that. We moved to Naples, Florida, and Fort Lauderdale, and it was through my vision. I said, we're a national enterprise. Let's go there. We built 2 hospitals, 3 outpatient facilities, a number of clinics, and Cleveland Clinic, Florida now is booming. There's an enterprise in Abu Dhabi, as I mentioned. We had relationships with Singapore, Northern Ireland, Scotland, France, and it was all because of what I brought to the table. At least it was me that was pushing these as the chief operating officer of the Cleveland Clinic. And I couldn't be president of that organization because the charter called for the president to be a doctor who was elected by an internal board of governors. We had an external board of directors who actually looked at me as being the CEO. And I gave tentative or basic recognition to the CEO as the CEO, and we followed his directives, which were pretty much where we were going as an organization. But vision, understanding the organization, the key element, one of the most important things a CEO can do is the deployment of resources. Deploy resources to achieve the greatest opportunities or seize the opportunities that are out there, and to mitigate the risks and the dangers that the environment or competitors are bringing to the forefront in your particular marketplace. So I believe understanding the organizational structure, being able to deploy resources appropriately, who can best do these different things and achieve the results and success in the mission of the organization.
Okay, Ms. Fernandez, so we've talked about vision, we've talked about integrity, talked about maybe a certain restlessness, that can be a good thing, and using your resources wisely. Let's talk about the other side of that coin. What have you seen foul up a leader? What have you seen, what trait or what sort of activity screws up a leader?
Sure. And it's unfortunate that I hear about these behaviors that get leaders derailed in my coaching work. And that is when leaders get so stuck on a solution that has worked in some context in the past, or a way of being that has made them successful, but have not been able to apply that in a new context. So in other words, they come into a new environment and a new culture and don't take the time to really understand that culture, understand the team, understand what people's interests are, what their motivations are, and want to come in and apply a solution that may not work in that space. And that has completely derailed, I've seen some people's careers because, and organizations, because it creates distrust. It puts in jeopardy any strategies that leader wants to implement, because the team cannot follow a leader that didn't take the time to find out who they are, or to even understand all of what had been built in the organization. So I would say that that's something to watch out for.
Mr. Cuthbertson, what do you think? Stubbornness obviously can derail. Anything else?
Yeah, I think a degree of that. I think oftentimes it's where people get filled with their own self-importance, and they find that they have this title, president and CEO, and therefore they can walk on water, or they really don't make mistakes. Unfortunately, of late in the Wall Street Journal this past week, there's been a number of major debacles by individuals who had really gotten out of touch with who they were. They took their eye off the ball. Robert Bentley, who's the governor of Alabama, I'm sure you all read, resigned. He led 28 million people, and he let them all down because of some unfortunate approaches he took to leadership. And it was the cover-up. He was covering it up and using state resources to cover an affair he was having with a staffer, as I understand it. We saw the Wells Fargo thing this week. 200 million accounts were opened illegally, and people were paying fees for accounts they didn't open. They finally fired the retail banking person who was responsible for that, but then the CEO was covering for her, and he was just let go, I believe, in September or October. They're now clawing back their bennies and all of that, and their stock options. It costs Wells Fargo $180 million in penalties and fees. But just the reputation, the injury to their reputation is long-lasting, and people are pulling their accounts out of that. So dishonesty to a certain extent, lack of vision, lack of understanding the value and the culture of the organization, as Idalia talked about. It's critical to maintain that culture if it's valid and if it works. But once you violate that trust of the people that work with you, there's little hope of surviving or coming back to a point of prominence.
Dr. Gooden, what do you think? We've heard stubbornness, we've heard self-importance, we've heard trust violations. What really can screw up a leader?
Well, I certainly agree with everything that's been said so far, and I think setting aside sort of the illegal or grossly improper behavior, which I think is definitely a reputation downer or killer. I think one of the things that derails a lot of careers is not understanding both the internal and external environment of the organization. So someone comes in, and this goes back to some of in terms of the culture piece, internal to the organization, but also the organization's relationship with other organizations is really important. We don't exist, our organizations don't exist on an island to themselves. It's built by reputation, by relationships that we have with sister organizations, partner organizations, and that's really important. And I think oftentimes, especially I think folks who come in and either perceive or maybe they do have a mandate of change. I've seen a lot of leaders really sort of derail, crash and burn very quickly because they've maybe gotten excited about the change mandate, but haven't gotten excited about the learning opportunity that needs to happen before sort of initiating change. And so not knowing sort of who's who in the zoo, and not figuring that out a little too late, and not really knowing kind of where the power centers are within the organization, not being able to capitalize on the talent that's there, so being sort of a rush to judgment to kind of overhaul and redo. And again, all those things are appropriate in context, but it's very, very important to really, I think, spend the first 6 months or so on any position really learning, listening, getting to know people. This is not an organization or entity that knowledge is going to just come from down high, on high. You're going to have to put that blood and sweat in there and into learning a lot from people who are going to be able to help you out down the road. But I think when people don't understand that internal environment or don't take the time to understand the internal environment or their external environment and the organizations that they interface with, they sometimes find that they're on a downhill slope pretty quickly.
Well, we're going to change gears slightly from more general questions to perhaps a little more specific questions to us at Virginia's community colleges. We'll go to Mr. Cuthbertson. As a state board member, what do you believe will help us, Virginia's community colleges, make smarter decisions?
I don't think it's a question of smarter decisions. I think it's better decisions. I think all the decisions that are made, by and large, are pretty smart. They become better when we have a better handle on the information that we're dealing with. I think the business models, and we've talked about this, of course, at board meetings, the business model for higher education is changing, and in some instances it's broken. And we have to recognize that there's a declining population of students that are either going to college or coming to the community college system. We need to recognize those changes in our business model and react to it. So if we understand that our marketplace is changing, then we're going to make better decisions. We need to capture that student earlier on in the process. We need to know who's coming to the college rather than waiting till August when they apply because they got waitlisted or rejected at 3 or 4 other colleges. We don't have much time to deal with that patient to make him, or patient, I'm sorry, that student to make him or her successful. If we could capture that person earlier on in the process, when they begin to make that decision as to they're going to go to college, and typically there's a federal form that they fill out where they indicate the colleges they go to, and then that's applied to the colleges. The colleges tell them how much federal aid they'll get and how much of a scholarship they'll get. It doesn't provide for community colleges to be listed on that form, and I think that's something we can change. Get our name on there and have them put a community college on there as a backup, almost like a backup school, so that we would learn of that person's interest back in April or May of that year. We could contact them early on and give them a cost opportunity or a comparison that might make a little more sense to them economically, and at least we'd have contact. We'd capture that patient right off the bat. And the other aspect of that, as I mentioned, is that our model is changing. When the system was designed, we had a distributed system of 23 colleges all over the state. But the front door of these colleges is no longer on your campus, it's on your website. And people go to the website and find out what's going on. And if they can't get through that system, or if it's not a responsive system, we may lose that person for all time. So if somebody clicks on an MBA program, or maybe not MBA, but a nursing program or a particular engineering program, we should have the ability to contact that student immediately. Within 5 minutes, they should get a phone call. Lock them in. Get them the information they need. So capturing the student earlier on in the decision, in that student's decision process, I think might be an opportunity that we could pursue and study and understand. Where our students go, the data is an area I think we all agree needs to be broadened, strengthened. I think we have great opportunities. We're well poised to be the answer and the solution to the rising cost of healthcare, of higher education, and forgive me, I spent 35 years in medicine.
Now, Dr.
But
Gooden,
the two are related. So.
they're very related. Now, Dr. Gooden, you're sitting among our current chair and a former chair. You're one of our newest board members,
Yes.
but you're a new member with 20 years of higher ed experience. What can we be doing to make better or different decisions?
Well, here I'll take my own advice and say I'm too new to be giving advice. I probably haven't been here long enough. But I will say, I think for any organization, I think it's important for individuals in the organization, especially those at the top, to become excellent shoe wearers. And what do I mean by that? There's that proverb that says only the wearer knows where the shoe pinches. And one of my favorite shows, I don't know if anybody watches it, is Undercover Boss. I just absolutely love that show. Does anybody watch that? It comes on Saturday nights, Undercover Boss. Because people, they go in disguise and they go into their own organization, and they learn things that they didn't know about their organization, either about the benefits or the slowness of a system, and they come back with so much knowledge about the organization that otherwise they would not have captured. And I think, taking the time to do that is important. I'll share one small example. I mentioned I just finished my term as president of the American Society for Public Administration, and one of the problems that folks talked about was we didn't have a lot of people filling out conference evaluation forms. And so, a lot of people don't respond. We only get 10% of respondents or 15% of respondents. And so, okay, well, So I clicked on the link and I saw where you have to fill in, like you got to, what's the name of the session that you went to and who were all the presenters. And nobody's going to type all that in. Every time you leave a session, you're not going to type in, everything verbatim about who was on the session. This is why we're getting one of the reasons why we're getting a low response rate is because, it's too laborious in order to complete the evaluation. So I think it's really important to really get to know the organization and to see firsthand sort of how systems operate, where there are, going into classrooms, attending meetings, really just getting a sense and observing, I think is really, really important, so that, you do have a better sense of sort of where some of the speed bumps might be.
Now, Ms. Fernandez, as our longest serving board member up here, with the Undercover Boss idea, what program should we sign the chancellor up for?
All of them. Actually, I want to take a little bit of a different angle there, but I'm totally on board with what both of you have said, but particularly this point about, wearing the shoes. I think that what would help us make smarter decisions, if we are using that term, would be to have the student voice included in our decision making, and I think that this goes back to my work with Latino youth, where in another quick story, we were running a residential program on a student. This is for high school students, bringing them to a college campus for a 4-day, 3-night symposium where we covered everything from FAFSA to career aspirations, writing an essay, how to write a college essay, a whole lot of learning opportunities. And oftentimes we would have scholarships that we would offer. And there were two sort of learning moments for us. One is that we would offer the scholarships. This was like $5,000 scholarships for college. All you had to do was sign in. And pretty much it was, students didn't know this, but it was pretty much guaranteed because this funder was not getting a lot of interest. So, but then students wouldn't sign up. So that was one learning moment. And the other was we were offering a session for students on just kind of sharing what is the value of a college education, why go to college, and we would go through, what is the earning potential, do you want to live in this kind of house versus this kind of house, or do you want to have this kind of life versus this kind of life? And we got feedback from the students and when we just said, we've been doing this like Delta process ourselves on what we think is not working. Let's bring some students in. Let's have a conversation with them. And the feedback we got on the scholarship is that, we were offering the scholarship when they came in the door, before they even thought about college. They were already thinking, this is not for me. It wasn't after the 4th day that they were like, I know, I have a pathway. So when we moved the scholarship towards the 3rd day, we had all the students signing up for the scholarship because now they had made that shift. And the second feedback point was, I get this messaging around your earning potential. But do you understand what that feels like when I go home and tell my parents that maybe the house that they worked so hard for is not good enough? Like that I'm aspiring for something else, and there was some messaging there that was way off, and it just wasn't working for them. So we had them redesign that whole workshop. So again, just the importance of having the end user of our services, be part of our thinking and our strategizing, I think would help.
And Dr. Gooden, that's a good transition to our next question. Putting ourselves in the shoes of our students. In your opinion, what are the untapped opportunities that lie within our organization?
I think one of the biggest opportunities, and I'm very sort of passionate about this, is I think we need to reconstruct the narrative around community colleges a bit. And that's sort of my personal mantra, I guess. I have this equation, CC equals CC. Community colleges should equal, it's your college of choice. Oftentimes, and I think we shouldn't, feed into this, that, there's always community college, or you can go to a community college, or the way we say it and phrase it sometimes gives the impression that it's a second best. I can tell you, my education at Patrick Henry Community College was second to none. And so, and as a student who went to Patrick Henry Community College, I went there because it was my first choice. I was fortunate to be a strong student. I was fortunate to come from a family who could pay for my education. I didn't have to take any student loans. My sister didn't. Our parents paid for it, which I greatly appreciate, and we've done likewise for our children. But I think it wasn't until I got out that I started hearing people would come up and say, well, why did you decide to go to a community college? And I thought, well, this was my college of choice. I mean, it was there. I liked what was being offered. It provided an opportunity to transfer. It was a very smart decision economically. I mean, because we weren't wealthy. We were middle class, but it seemed to me that the dollars and cents made sense. So I really think I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago. We had a higher education panel at Virginia Commonwealth University, and we had and it was great that we had representatives from the community college there as well. And someone in the audience said, again, it says, well, community colleges can be great if you can't get into, and please don't go down that road, So I think we really need to be proud and reframe. And stop thinking of ourselves as, we're like this, we're the date to the prom, folks. We're not the backup, and let's act like that. And so we have a lot to offer. We do a lot of great things. And so for me, it's CC equals CC. Community colleges are the colleges of choice. We're second to none. We're not offering excuses. We're competing for, students that other universities are competing for, and we're competitive. And still we're devoted to our principles of access and affordability, and all of those things in many ways make us the college of choice. And so that's the strong message and campaign that I would like to see us undertake.
Mr. Cuthbertson, I saw some head nodding.
I think that's excellent. Promotion of who we are is key to our success. We should not be the provider of education as the last resort. As I say, because you're on a wait list somewhere, so I'll go to a community college. I think how we promote who we are, the product that we offer, the benefits that can accrue to the students who come through our systems, the guaranteed admission program. If you try to get into UVA as a resident of Virginia, you're not going to get in. But you can get in through the guaranteed transfer program. If that were made more known, if people understood that process, or go to Piedmont and understand they don't even go 2 years. All they have to do is go a year, and then they're in a better shot to get into UVA. That's assuming that you're talking about a 4-year college education. A lot of what we do within the community college is a 2-year situation, a certificate, an associate's degree. 50% of the RNs in Virginia are community college graduates, and they may go on to get their Bachelor of Science in nursing degree, but they can still be a major contributor to the economic development of the state simply as a registered nurse. So the 4-year college is not necessarily the mantra or where everybody should be going or needs to be going. We've had relationships with the 4-year colleges for a long time. Bland College was a branch of William and Mary, as I understand it. Withville was a branch of UT. What about some reverse engineering and come back and see if we can establish relationships with four-year colleges, where if you're waitlisted by that college, you might be suggested to go to one of the community colleges, and we'll give you a name tag, we'll give you an athletic pass, an activities card, and say that you are a BCU student that's working towards the guaranteed admission program. These are just, out of my hat, but those are the kinds of things, a relationship with the our sister institutions, to see if there's anything that would move the needle in the right direction.
Ms.
But I firmly believe that we can't be the provider of last resorts. We should be that's students' first choice. And if we capture them earlier in that decision process, I think we can have some great success.
Ms. Fernandez, I think about that when we talk about things for middle skills, right? Middle skill career. I don't know anyone who's ever aimed to be middle.
Right.
Absolutely right. And I couldn't agree more. I think that we all wrote the same thing here around this issue as the greatest untapped potential for our systems and our colleges. And what came to my mind as untapped was, who are the influencers for students? And obviously their peers, but also, it gets to who are the mindsets that we need to shift around what the quality is of community college education. And to me, that was partly our businesses, because I know I've talked to businesses about, could you provide a scholarship for students in community college, and that, oh no, we need for, and I know that was a narrative that needed to change. But also parents. I hear a lot about the K-12 partnership, but I hear less about how we engage with parents and parents of 8th graders and 10th graders. And those are the influencers and the ones that are going to drive that decision of where to begin your academic journey.
I agree.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left in our session. I did want to make sure we had time for any questions that may come from the room. Before you ask, I would ask you to hold on. We have a microphone, and this is, of course, for the recording. Are there any questions for our board members? Don't be shy, they don't bite. All right, I guess I'll ask one more question. I think Ms. Fernandez, time to start with you. Just sort of a closing advice question. What one piece of advice would you give someone interested in an executive leadership position? We have a lot of faculty members, a lot of administrative support folks in the room. So what's that one piece of advice to take that next step in your career?
Yeah, I'll go back to my beginning statement, right? Really know what you want. Be clear of where your strengths are, what you're really, really good at, and what you're not so great at. You just have people around you who do that well, to be your mentor, to be your guide. And lastly, I'll say, don't let your aspirations be a best-kept secret, speaking of best-kept secrets, but really share your vision with others. Share what your aspirations are with others, even if you're still 5 years away. Right. Begin to talk that out with folks, and you'll find, champions, you'll find mentors, you'll find advisors through that process. But, really knowing yourself, claiming your strengths, and speaking boldly about those, and at the same time your aspirations and what you hope to achieve.
Mr. Cuthbertson, one piece of advice for someone looking for the next step?
Idalia said it all, but I drove down here this morning and I followed a truck, Ferguson, which is a bathroom or a kitchen utensil, washers, dryers, all kinds of accoutrements for new homes. And across the back it said, passionate people. And I thought, what a wonderful place to work. Everybody's passionate at this. They failed to follow through on it. They failed to say, we are passionate to provide you with the best possible service or with the best possible product. But it holds true from what Idalia says. We must be passionate about who we are and what our vision is and what our dreams and goals and aspirations are. And don't hide your light under a bushel basket. Make sure people fully understand who you are, what your skill set is. Volunteer for things beyond what you normally do, and then excel at those. Don't take on something you're not going to be successful at, of course, but this is the restlessness sense. Move from one to another And gradually, if you have an advisor, somebody that you trust, who can mentor your career, could be giving you pointers. This is the career coaching, actually, that you do, and advise you without any investment in your effort other than their own personal desire to be helpful to you. I've had career counselors, and I'm not formal and such, but individuals that I trusted, I respected, and I listened to what they were talking about. And I let them know what I wanted to do, and they were very helpful in filling out some of the gaps and suggesting approaches.
Dr. Gooden, final word is yours.
No, I agree completely. I think the only thing I would say, I guess, a little differently or add to that discussion is I think it's really important. I tell anyone, sometimes folks will say, well, I want to be dean, or I want to be president, or I want to be director of, such and such. And my question is always, setting aside the title and the salary, do you want to do the job? Because I see so many people who get excited about the name card, and, that's great. It's great at cocktail hour to be like, I'm top dog of this or that. But do you really want to do the job? And that's important, because if you find yourself doing something solely for the title and the salary, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great to have the associated title and salary and benefits that come with that. But don't let that be the sole motivating factor. Look at the description, look at the job, find out about people who are doing the position, and see, do you want to do that position? Because if you want to excel and do well, you're going to have, you're going to have to be in 24/7. And if it's something that you don't want to do, I think you're going to find it unfulfilling, and therefore I think it's not going to be very successful.
Well, our board members, we're grateful for your service to our board, and we're grateful for everything today. Well, will you join me in giving them a round of applause?